Good morning, boys and girls. I am Mr. Dennis, and with me today I have Cammie and Tatum.
Hi everyone.
Yes, we welcome you with us. We are doing a new series which we entitled, I Didn't Know That About Wyoming. Throughout these series, we'll be taking a look at some of the history pertaining to some of the stories, legends, events, people, and places that have been known and have become famous throughout our beautiful state of Wyoming. In fact, today we're going to be starting our first series talking about and learning a little bit more about the medicine wheel. Now, as we begin this, I'd like to ask Tatum and Cammie, what do they know about the medicine wheel? So, Tatum, why don't you begin?
I know that it is in the shape of a wheel and it is made out of stone and rocks.
All right. And Cammie, how about you?
I know it has 28 spokes, and if you look at it from the sky, it looks like a turtle shell.
Oh, you two know quite a bit about the medicine wheel. In fact, maybe we can begin to learn a little bit more, taking the facts that they have shared with us. Amongst the ancient tribes of the Arapahoes, the Shoshones, in fact, throughout my study, I have found that most of the Plains Indian tribes tell of a legend that begins the story of how the medicine wheel came about. It started with a great flood that came upon the earth. And as the great flood came and the waters began to subside, there happened to be one lone man who remained. This lone man was so lonesome and wanted so much to have a family that he prayed to the Great Spirit, how can I make an earth where others can come and join with me? The Great Spirit told him to gather together the animals that have remained upon the earth, and that each animal would give something of itself that would help the lone man to become happier. So he began to call the animals together one by one. First he called the buffalo. With the buffalo he gave the warm buffalo robe. Then he called the coyote, and the coyote came and taught him how to hunt. He called the fox, and the fox helped him to know wisdom and how to be wise. And then, as he continued to call the animals, there was one, as the legend tells us, that as all the animals came and gave something of themselves, there was one animal who gave its very life. And that, my boys and girls, was the turtle. And this goes back to what Cammie taught us about the importance of the shape of the medicine wheel, and this is why many archaeologists and historians believe that perhaps there's some truth to this legend that the medicine wheels came about as a result of the story of the turtle. Now, as the story goes, the Great Spirit told the lone man to take this turtle, to put him into the great waters that covered the earth, and that as the turtle swam, he was to dive down into the bottom of the ocean, and there in the bottom of the ocean he would find mud and silt. And from this mud and silt he'd be able to roll it and be able to create an earth in which people could come, and he could have a family like you and I. So the lone man went out and he put the turtle into the water, and the turtle began to swim deep into the ocean. The lone man waited along the shore all that day, and that night the turtle returned. But as the turtle returned and the lone man picked up the turtle, he looked in the palms of his hands, and nowhere could he find the mud and silt that was supposed to come where he could create the earth. Oh, how sad the lone man was. But Turtle, seeing the sadness in the lone man, said, "Let me try one more time." So the lone man once more took Turtle and put him out to sea and let him swim. As Turtle came, the lone man waited along the shore 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and it wasn't until the 3rd day that the lone man began to look, and there, floating in the waters, was an object. He watched it as it came closer, and as it got closer, he noticed that indeed it was Turtle, but he was upside down. Turtle had drowned. Oh, the lone man was so sad, thinking, never will I be able to have a family like everyone else. But then, as he picked up Turtle's palms, he looked, and there, inside, was some of the mud and silt from the ocean. He took the mud and silt and he rolled it. And as he rolled it, it began to get larger and larger and larger until it was like the earth we live on today. And so with that, the great Creator allowed other people to come. And so the legend is that the shell of the turtle represents the earth. Its crevices and its bumps and all the different shapes represent the mountains and valleys and streams and rivers and all the things that are necessary for us to live on the earth today. Well, that is one of the legends and one of the reasons why they believe that the medicine wheel is literally in the shape of a turtle. In fact, as you look at the picture of the medicine wheel on the screen, you'll see that the medicine wheel has 4 cairns or teepee rings that surround the 4 corners of the medicine wheel, and there is 1 teepee ring or cairn that extends in the front, which is called the extended wheel. So as you look at the shape of the medicine wheel, indeed it does look like a turtle. So perhaps this theory is correct. However, there is another theory that some of the ancient ancestors of the Shoshone tribe, one of the first early tribes here in Wyoming, the Sheep Eaters, and you may not have known that, came here in the early days. They were also known as the Dog People because unlike the Plains Indians who had horses, they used dogs for carrying and for transporting and for helping them to hunt and to maintain their lifestyle. Now, Cammie mentioned that there were 28 spokes within the medicine wheel. And this is why some historians believe that the medicine wheel started with the sheep eaters. Evidence that the sheep eaters lived here came about because of the fact that there are teepee-shaped lodges still standing up in central Wyoming. Sheep eaters referred to them as wigwams, and we believed that they were the homes where the sheep eaters, temporary homes that the sheep eaters would use as they would go out on their hunts. Now, what did they hunt? Well, they hunted the bighorn sheep up in the Bighorn Mountains. And evidence of that is shown by the sheep traps that are still there. These traps were used, made out of logs and timber in order to create traps so that as they herded the sheep down, the sheep would run into these wooden traps and not be able to escape. Once in the trap, then it was easy for them to club the sheep and to supply winter food so that they could survive. Now, we also know that from the sheep eaters, we're here because of the writings that are found in the walls of the Dinwiddie Lake. These writings, as you can see on the screen there, signify here a burial ground in which they are telling the stories of families and warriors who have been buried there. There's an interesting feature about these drawings if you look real close. Tatum, do you see anything unique about any of the hands on these particular petrographic drawings?
Some only have 4 fingers.
Some only have 4 fingers. Cammie, do you have any idea why that might be?
No. But
Okay, well, maybe we can learn about that. That would be something fun to do. I want you to think about that. You think you might know? Okay, why do you think it is?
Because some of them get their some of their fingers cut off.
I think some of them get a part of their fingers cut off. Well, let's examine and continue our story of the medicine wheel and take a look at that. Now, Cammie, you mentioned that there were 28 spokes. That is very significant because amongst the sheep eaters, we know that there were 28 clans or subgroups within that nation. It is said that each one of the spokes that you spoke of represent one of the clans that are of the sheep eater nation. Each clan is named after an animal. So one might be the bear clan, the buffalo clan, the sheep clan, the turtle clan. In fact, one of the things that is consistent amongst all of the studies of those who have looked at medicine wheels is that whether the one that is at the Bighorn Basin, which is one of the most popular one, or whether we look at this one here that was discovered in central Wyoming, at each of these medicine wheels there is an arrow, and that arrow points north, indicating that there was a movement of the tribes that would come from the south and begin to move north and would make camp and build a medicine wheel, and then would begin to move into another camp as they continue their northward expedition. That, as we look at some of the other medicine wheels, and you'll notice that this one is shaped much different. It looks differently. But this helps to support the first theory of the Turtle Clan. The Turtle Clan, for example, began down in South and Central America. And so one of the fascinating things that we know about the medicine wheel is that if we were in a plane flying over the Rocky Mountains, and we were flying from South America clear up to Canada, we could literally see a stretch of medicine wheels approximately 200 to 250 miles apart from each other that would make a straight line, which would give evidence that the turtle story had some relevance to the existence of the medicine wheel. But we can't discredit the sheep eaters, for they also, with the 28 spokes, provide strong evidence that the medicine wheel was built and used for some purpose for all of these particular tribes. Even today, we know that the medicine wheel is revered, protected, and used by the Native Americans in our century. How it's used, why it is used, we don't know all the answers to that. But one thing that we do know that is common, in each of the medicine wheels, there are colors that represent significant spiritual and physical, emotional, and mental experiences for the Native Americans. In fact, the colors that they use are red, yellow, white or blue, and black. How about we make a medicine wheel today?
Good.
You'd like to do that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do that. I'll give each of you a piece of paper. Now, you boys and girls at home, if you want to grab a piece of paper, and it can be any kind of paper, it can even be lined paper, or it can just be a piece of paper that you use for typing paper. Go ahead and do that, and then see if your mom will allow you to use one of her saucers. And go ahead and just put that right on the center of that paper. And then I'm going to have Tatum and Cammie go ahead and make a circle, if they will. Ah, that is great. Now, If you will, you notice that Mr. Dennis put a medicine wheel diagram up here on the board. And so if you can just draw a straight line, just going from the top to the bottom. Boys and girls, you want to do this at home. Just divide that circle in half. Once that circle is divided in half, go ahead and take your ruler and divide it in half the other way, making 4 equal parts. Now, you'll notice on Mr. Dennis's diagram up here that I have represented each of the 4 main colors that are significant to the medicine wheel. Right now, why don't you just go ahead and write the name of the color in, and then later today you can take the time to color it. So in the first square on my right, go ahead and write red. Directly below that, go ahead and write yellow. Moving over to the left, go ahead and mark that as blue. And finally, the top left, mark black. Now, once you have these marked in those colors, later today, as I said, you can go ahead and color those in. Cammie and Tatum, if you want to go ahead and turn yours over so you can show them what that would look like, this is what your medicine wheels should appear like. Now, with that, let's talk a little bit about some of the significance of the medicine wheel itself. First of all, if we take a look at the black quadrant, we know that amongst the Native Americans, that represents the bear. And so you could write bear next to that area. That is the animal symbol. If we were thinking of the sheep eaters, that would be one of the axles that the wheel would represent, would be the bear. The bear, in and of itself, represents the earth. And that would be the world in which we live. The bear represents spirituality. We move over towards the right-hand side, the red. We see that that color is represented by the coyote. Give you a minute to put coyote there. The coyote represents the animals that are upon the earth. And the coyote is known for its mental growth. So we move down into the yellow quadrant. That would be represented by the eagle. The eagle represents all the plants that grow upon the earth. And its feelings is emotion. The last of the quadrants is represented by the buffalo. Buffalo represents the air that we breathe. It represents our physical strength. Now, you probably wonder what the rest of these words are for. These are the attributes that the Native Americans want each of their children to know and to live. And you notice that they are placed on the outside of the wheels above each of the 4 colors. Now, Tatum and Cammie. Oh, that looks good, Cammie. And Tatum, you're coming along. I hope at home, you boys and girls, even though you may not have these pictures, are writing these words down, because they help us to represent the importance of the medicine wheel itself. As we look at this picture, Cammie or Tatum, what do these lines look like now that you know that each of these are represented by an animal?
Turtle shell? The lines on a turtle shell?
Kind of lines on a turtle shell.
Yeah.
Yeah. As we think about the earth we live, the animals that live here, the plants that grow, and the air we breathe, why are those all necessary for life?
So we can live.
So we can live. They help us to live. So this becomes representative of the trail of life. The air, the earth, the animals, and the plants, all coming together to a central point and learning how they work together to save our environment, to make it safe for all of us, so that all of us can have what we need and not lose any of these precious things that are necessary for life. When that happens, notice how we feel. We are physically fit, we are emotionally fit, we are mentally fit, and we are spiritually fit. And so, in the history of the medicine wheel, one of the things we do understand and know is that the medicine wheel becomes a healing power. That as we become in harmony with the world, we become in harmony with ourselves. Now, one of the traditions of the Native Americans was that they would not let the children, the young people, start to travel these trails alone until they could exhibit truth, forgiveness, kindness, peace, and a healing, or we might call that a repentance or a forgiveness of ourselves, And so part of the history that goes along with the medicine wheels is that we do know that a period of time in the early 1800s, and even today, there is a lodge that was generally built around where these medicine wheels were built, which they would perform what was known as the sun dance. The sun dance was a once-a-year event where young warriors like yourselves would want to go and be able to perform inside the lodge, but to do so you had to go on a quest. And in that quest, you would have to demonstrate all these qualities. Once you demonstrated those qualities, that meant that you could enter into the lodge, similar to the one that you see on the picture. When you entered the lodge, each of you would enter by your particular clan's name. So, Cammie, if you were a bear, you would enter in one of the spokes here. Tatum, if you were a coyote, you would enter in one of the spokes over there. And each one of the members of the clan who were worthy to go in would enter in by their particular axle on the wheel. Now, here's a question for you. what do you suppose happened inside?
They would sacrifice animals.
Well, you are right about sacrifice. They didn't sacrifice animals.
They would
Sacrifice.
sacrifice humans.
Like their fingers.
Well, they wouldn't sacrifice the actual humans, but they had a ceremony where part of the ceremony was a sacrificial part. In that, they would take claws or sharp sticks, put into the breast of the young warrior
And hang
who
them.
was going to participate, and hang them by a center pole. And then that young warrior would begin to pull out until his flesh pulled off, and that was signifying that he was willing to give back to the Great Spirit a part of himself for all the blessings that they had received. Then comes the part that you guys like. That's when they would then take, and the final part of the sacrifice was where they would cut off part of their little finger.
And that's why some of them only have 4 fingers.
And that's exactly why in our drawing of the Dinwiddie petrographs, only some of them have 4 fingers. And so here we see, again, strong evidence that the medicine wheels that we've talked about today most likely came about from the early ancestors of the Shoshone tribe, the sheep eaters, the first and earliest Indians here in Wyoming. I bet you didn't know that. And so as we conclude our study of the medicine wheel today, we thank you for your time and hope that you have enjoyed our presentation and learned a little something new that you didn't know about Wyoming.